inspiring you to set the marketplace ablaze in partnership with an awesome and limitless God. This is the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast, and this isn't business as usual. Here's your host and Chief Fire Igniter, Shay Bynes.
Welcome back to the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast. This is your host, Shay Bynes, and our goal here is to inspire you to operate your business completely yielded and in partnership with our awesome and limitless God. Today's conversation is with Kevin Adams and Matt Ham, the dynamic duo of YouPrint, where they help people to live the life of impact that they were created for. Now, it's not often that I have an opportunity to chat with business partners, but I always enjoy it. While business partnership does have its challenges, when you have two or more people coming together of like mind, like heart, starting and growing a kingdom-driven business that is yielded to God, and it's both led and empowered by the Spirit of God, the results are going to be powerful. So listen in as Kevin and Matt share how God brought them together, how they navigated through discovering and embracing both their individual and collective gifts to do business by the grace of God. Let's get started. Kevin Adams and Matt Ham, how are you guys?
Fabulous.
Yeah, we're great. This is Matt Ham, aka Jimmy Fallon. So you want to?
So this is going to be. So you guys are letting me know this is going to be an interesting conversation. Well,
right.
I've had a chat with you guys before, so I already know that you guys are a fun bunch. So I'm looking forward to this. Now I've got to set this up because Kevin, you've been on the podcast, I think twice, either once or twice. It might have been one episode broken up into two. I don't remember because we had a long chat.
Yeah.
a few years ago.
That's right. I guess maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, it's actually been a while. And then it was funny because then somebody sent me a message to introduce me to Matt. And then when I went to go check out Matt, I saw your name, Kevin, associated to his Facebook page. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. And then I went and looked it up a little more and I was like, oh, wait, they're business partners. So this is fun. So I got to reconnect with Kevin and be introduced to Matt. Yeah. And so you guys have gotten together to do a business called YouPrint, where you're doing mentoring and coaching and helping people get aligned with the goodness that God has on the inside of them. And you guys are radio co-hosts, Wake Up Our Faith, right?
Yes.
That's it.
You got it.
Okay, and what city are you in?
We're in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Wilmington, North Carolina. All right. So I want to explore, because on the podcast, we're always talking about what it looks like. What's the adventure of being led by Holy Spirit, empowered by Holy Spirit, and the work that we do. And I don't often talk to business partners. And so I feel like we have a unique opportunity here to chat about what this adventures look like for you guys and even how you work together and stay on one accord and on all of that good stuff. So let's start off by you guys sharing how you two even came together in business in the first place.
That could take the whole show.
Give me the condensed version of how you guys came together in business.
Yeah, I was in that season of I self-published my book and was doing speaking and stuff. And I was kind of enamored with that thing, published authors and Twitter followings and all this stuff. And when I was introduced to Kevin, I saw, oh my gosh, he's published by Zondervan and he's got this big Twitter following. And I think I was kind of caught up in a lot of that stuff. And I was like, well, let's meet, man. Let's get coffee. And as soon as I did, he's like, I don't care about that junk, like lovingly. He's like, it ain't about all that, And I'm going like, oh my gosh, what are you talking about? And I'll never forget the first time I met him, it was very, I don't want to use the word guarded in a bad way. He was just incredibly wise to not dive too deep too fast. And I go, there's a lot more here that we need to explore. And he said, we'll get there. And that began what I would say is probably a 2 to 2.5 year process of just becoming brothers. For me, 37, being wrecked of my own pride and being humble enough to be mentored, to be taught, to be led and really kind of look into Kevin and, respecting what God had done in his life and going, all right, there's something here that God is doing, and I want to partner with God. And therefore, I'm going to trust God with Kevin and trust Kevin with the Lord. And we're just going to see what God does. And, that was kind of the genesis of YouPrint, because Kevin's pouring into me these years of wisdom that were forged through his suffering and his story. And I'm like, man, Kevin, this is so valuable. The world desperately needs this. And, kind of speaking for him, Kevin was the guy who would probably rather hide in the room over the garage talking to the Lord than kind of be out on the street corner.
Right.
And and I was like, dude, I'm dragging you out and we're going to go and do this thing. And he's like, I know I need to. Let's go do it. And so that was the thing. But I had to learn many, many lessons along the way and be prepared. And so here we are now 3 years later. And I looked at him yesterday. We were getting on the elevator after recording the radio show. And I said, it's insane to think about where God has brought us from that humble beginning of a coffee shop, what was now 3.5 years ago. So It's just so cool to see how he's done this whole thing from beginning to end.
Well, let me add one thing to this whole thing real quick, just to add another brushstroke. I came to Wilmington, which I didn't even connect Wilmington to Wrightsville Beach. I came here on the way to the Outer Banks in 1990. I was going to surf. I'm from Jacksonville, Florida, so old surfer. And in 1990, I came through here and I stopped here and I didn't go to the Outer Banks because it was way too far. Anyway, all that said, I've got video from then being in the KOA campground in Ogden, which is, and I moved here after God paid off my house, paid $87,000 off. I don't know anyone else that's gotten this. Moved me here, and we were living about 2 miles from that KOA, and I drove by it for a whole year before I even recognized it. And he spoke to me, and he reminded me what I prayed on the beach in Wrightsville Beach in 1990.
Wow.
He was a kid. No.
Yeah.
I'm just messing with you.
Yes.
But I said, Lord, I'd love to live in a place like this one day if you'll let me. And here we are. So that ties in. Anyway, it's a big deal. So we know there's something big going on right here in our geography.
Yeah, that's so good. Now, the part that I miss in the story here, so I see that I understand how you met, but how did you get from mentor-mentee relationship to we're doing business? I mean, it's kind of a big deal to decide we're going to go into business together. So what took place? How did that part come together?
I don't think I ever had any hesitation there. I mean, none. There was never this is business and we need to have an agreement and, we should have attorneys look at it. It was never any of that. And a part of that's kind of probably my character. I mean, I'm just kind of open-hearted and, let's go. And yet at the same time, I just saw God in it from the beginning. And I was like, the Lord he's never going to fail me, And so I'm saying yes to him and whatever path that leads down. So that's just my take on it. It was just very natural, very much like, in fact, when people get weird about business, I understand whatever the logistics and all that kind of stuff. It's just never really been an issue for me and for us.
Yeah. Well, I came into this as a veteran and a very, very reluctant business, anything. And, from our time together, you and I, I just did not want any part of business anymore at all. I'd rather just sit on a roof and eat donuts, speak some wisdom to passersby. But that's the way God works. He prepares you. Every heavenly calling has an earthly preparation, and mine had passed. God restored my wife and I. We feel and look 10 years younger. And so what do you do with that? You got to do something. So it's time, like the priest is retired at 50, back in the that era. I turned 50 here. So God gave me back surfing, gave me a business partner with the heart, the same kind of heart, a David-like heart, and someone who would listen and grow with me, and someone I could absolutely trust in my life. But he's also gifted in ways that I'm not. And it just, when you're following the Spirit, it just starts to make sense in a different way, and you don't need all that other crap. And pardon my, I don't know if that's French or Latin.
English slang.
Yeah, right.
Acceptable here.
Anyway, Matt, we've had many days of struggles and stresses, and we can touch on that. But we always know, we always come back to, you got to go through the foundation, first floor, to get to the top of the building. And we always land right there and keep coming back to it over and over. And it's growing, and God's blessing it. It's already anointed. In other words, we're just following it, and that's a whole different, as you know, Shay, very well. That's a whole different way to live. You're living from heaven into the earth, and it's a big deal. So that's sort of why we're partners.
Yeah, that's so good. So it just kind of naturally came together. Naturally, all just kind of came together for you guys.
Yep.
So from an operational standpoint, okay, who does what from an operations standpoint in your business?
Before Kevin and I had ever met, a word that God spoke to him, which was the kind of catalyst for his book, I would say, is write and I will provide. Right?
I remember that from our interview.
Yeah. And a word that God had given me was just simply speak. And so when you put those back to back, that's honoring what God has said, like Kevin said, what has been anointed. So that all developed, though, after meeting each other to really dive into the stories and go, oh, wow, okay, this is God doing this from the very beginning.
So you guys are partners and you guys have to make decisions, and you both have a heart to be, spirit-led and how you're doing things. So how does this work with you guys? Do you ever have disagreements on how things should get done? And if so, how do you work through them? How do you guys keep Christ at the center of all of this stuff?
Kevin strangles me and goes, Matt, slow down. Stop.
That's it. That's the secret.
And I go, Kevin, come on. That kind of stuff.
Kite and string.
I didn't hear what you said, Kevin.
Kite and string. The kite will fly away. The string has to hold it in place. The string's worthless without the kite. Really, the essence of our decisions is gets to the part that gets a little spooky for some, and that is my gift. And I didn't realize this till probably the last few years, but it's apostolic, and it's meant for this, and I accept it. And I don't walk around talking about it, but that means something, and Matt appreciates that. And, his is evangelistic, and these are so beautiful together. And of course we need more, right? And he's growing it. But that right there, one guy gets the other guy out of the room and gets him moving and helping him and the other guy grounds him and keeps the vision on track and uncompromised. And it works great. So that's, there's two different legs of this thing. So Matt is great at deferring, and I appreciate that, because why wouldn't you after all this experience? But at the same time, I love his enthusiasm, his childlike heart, and he has great ideas, especially when it comes to reaching out to crowds of people. But I get mad sometimes with him for a minute, and I get like a little baby, and he gets frustrated, but he handles it well. So
I was going to say, I am waiting for Matt to respond to this question.
No, it's really awesome. And it's been such a lesson for me in just honest humility, right? Like humility at its core is just honesty, right? I think C.S. Lewis said, humility is not a beautiful woman trying to convince herself she's ugly. And I love that, because there's just honesty in humility. There's just honesty in humility. And so for me, humility was like, you know what? I've never run a business before. I've been a sales guy. And probably in little circles where I wanted to feel better at parties, I told people that I'm a business owner. No, you're not. You're a 1099 sales guy who has to do quarterly payrolls, but you don't know anything about running a business.
Right.
And I think early on, I would bow up and say, well, I'm a partner and I need to be able, that kind of thing. and really God was so gracious just to be like, your ego needs to get out of the way. And that means that you need to have a season of just being there, in your gift set and listening and yielding and so forth. And so God's been so good in that. And yeah, it's tough. I mean, the hardest part for me, kind of being vulnerable a bit, is, I tend to be very quick, fast thinking, that kind of thing. And I have had to learn how to honor Kevin with a different gift set, because Kevin tends to be more methodical and more paused and cautious with how he says things. And so I think early on, I'd be like, come on, dude. And that was that little kid being a little bit, I don't use proper language here. I'm sorry, I about cursed. Forgive me. I just want to, but I think I've had to grow beyond that, just to be like, man, there needs to be honor here, and to let Kevin be who Kevin is and Matt be who Matt is, and be comfortable in that, because we are teaching identity to people.
Yes.
So we are the proof of concept. And that means that there is equal value for everybody's gift. So that thing for me has been a big season of growth. And I think that's where we are now. We've come through that. And that's where I think God now is beginning to open up territory for us, because we have fully begun to steward who we are.
That was a word right there. And it's so true, though, because, this is the core of what you do. It's the essence of what you do. And so it's so important for you both to be able to walk that out. And I love what you said, Matt, in terms of being able to honor what's on the inside of him and what's on the inside of you, allowing God to develop those and work that together. And they're completely different gift sets, right?
Yes.
But yet they work together. But that's the beauty of the body of Christ, right? It's like,
amen.
That's the beauty. So I love it. All right. So let's shift gears a little bit. I want to talk about, in the type of business that you guys do, I want to hear maybe one of each of your favorite stories about how Holy Spirit led you in this business or with a client in any kind of way, operationally or engagement-wise with clients, where he led you in a way that was beyond what you would have thought, expected, or were comfortable with, but you did it and then saw the fruit from that. Who wants to share their favorite story first?
Oh my gosh. There's so many. I'm trying to kind of conceptualize. One thing that's fresh on my heart, right now, just been talking about that honor thing, is we had an opportunity to be in front of a fairly significant business owner here in Wilmington, and the guy beyond this area. This guy has a lot of clout recognition, and he's the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar innovative banking business, and here we find ourselves with this startup business being invited into his office. And,
and not an easy thing.
Yeah.
And we didn't try to do it,
This was favor of God, open door.
Yeah, yes. Kings and gifts and all that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And traditionally for Matt Ham, this was an opportunity to make that connection. If he remembers that I know this guy, and if I posture this in this way, and honestly, Shay, that's just how I've always operated, and I think it's a genuineness in it, but there's a little bit of a, self-will in there too. And so we were kind of in this growth season for us as a business. And I remember vividly the Holy Spirit speaking to me and said, do not speak first. Don't speak first. Shut your mouth, which is, as Kevin would tell you, adverse of, I'm about to blow up like a balloon if I don't get something out of my mouth.
Yes.
But what was powerful in this is God said, don't speak, honor Kevin. That's what he said. And so it was actually your birthday last year.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And we were sitting in this guy's office, and he comes in with that clout thing, and I just sat back. And Kevin said, hey, I'm Kevin Adams. And he stuck his hand across the table. He said, I'm Chip Mayham. And I said, I'm Matt Ham. And he went, Matt Ham, how do I know you? And come to find out, the week prior, he had skin cancer surgery, and the surgeon who had done the skin cancer surgery was the surgeon who did my skin cancer surgery.
Oh, wow.
It was the same surgeon that we had to these events prior. And that even shouldn't have happened because God did that one. So I'm saying there was like 17 things in the midst of this that Matt Ham could not take credit for.
Yes.
And God, it was that thing. And God said, if you listen to me, I will bring your gift before kings. And so that is just, that I told that story because it ties into this whole thing of honor.
Yes.
God always responds to honor. And so that was a huge lesson for me to get my ego out of the way and watch him show up. And man, and it's just been such a blessing to see him continue to move like that.
I love that.
So what Matt and I have worked at together is we don't have any agenda truly. There's no pitter pat. There's no networking. It's how can we really help people? How can we honor our Father and serve others? And we really mean it when so many people don't mean it, or there's some weird agenda.
Yeah.
So I think it comes across, but God's giving us that landscape because of that. So that's a good example. You can't talk to this guy. You can't get in front of him. Somebody told us the other day, we were sitting in front of him. He's like, how did you get in there? Like, man, God did that.
Yes.
So it's very powerful, especially for people in this area. They know this guy. He's big time. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, those are the that's part of this whole message around working by God's grace instead of our own grinds, instead of trying to force doors open, trying to make it happen. If I could just posture myself here or make sure this person knows this, then I can make my way in, but allowing God to be the God of the outcome and the God of the increase for you guys. And so I love that. That's really good. I love it. So I want to talk a little bit more. You guys have talked about really having a sense of your spiritual giftings. You know, Kevin, you talked about this word that you received and how you have embraced, you know, an apostolic gifting. Right. And Matt, you have an even evangelistic gifting. I want to talk a little bit about the process of embracing these spiritual gifts and embracing kind of just what God's put on the inside of you and being able to express those in the marketplace. So I'd love to hear from both of your perspectives, what that journey's looked like for you.
You know, the implanted word on top of the written word, it works together. So what, I listen to my wife. She just every once in a while has a zinger, and it's like, man, it just knocks you over the head. And I know when it's coming from that place. So she had went back to our home church. I don't know, it was a couple years ago. She goes back to Nashville. She's from there, so she visits regularly. Anyway, she went there, heard a good sermon, and picked up Danny Silk's Culture of Honor.
I love that book.
Yeah, and she said she was just blown away. They were on Apostle. They were talking about that, and Holly just melted. She said, "Kevin, this is you. It always has been, and it's time for you to step into that." And I'm like, I don't want any of that, you know. But it's real and true, and I understand it now. And it's not something to behold. It's a thing it's like God's got something going on. Let's just follow it. And we're all in this together. So anyway, but Holly she wanted me for about a year to pass that on to Matt. And I didn't, because I didn't want to put that on him. But not the apostle, but just the book and the idea. And so I did, and he read it, and because she kept bugging me about it. All right.
Good job, Holly.
Yeah. And so, you know, it was very clear to us who he is. And man, it's so needed. And that's why these things exist. So anyway, that's kind of how I think that unfolded, unless I'm missing something. And Matt knew and embraced it, and you can certainly speak to.
Yeah, you know, the whole idea of evangelist, I would have been the guy 5 years ago who said, heck no, man, I am not the evangelist. I'm a goofball. You know, I'll break out a Denzel Washington impression before I'll be an evangelist, you know, that kind of thing.
Yes. Oh, do you do that? Denzel Washington impression? Yeah, really okay, can I hear one? Sorry.
Okay. Shay, here we are, Shay, on the show, talking today with my girl right now. Okay, yeah.
I love it. Too fun. Okay, so you would rather be a Denzel Washington?
That was just way. That's my brain.
That guy's a hero. He's a hero.
Right? Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious. I love Denzel.
So the point being is I was so hesitant to embrace that idea just because I didn't know a whole lot about it. But in looking back, you know, my senior superlative was most school-spirited, as voted by my peers. And I'm the dude who dressed up in our school colors and, you know, was on the front row at all the games. And, you know, when I wasn't playing, and I was just like, I'm all about what I'm about. And I want to let everybody else know what I'm about. And I saw that evangelism is not, Bible beating preacher stuff. It is just about being able to infect people in a good way with what you are passionate about.
Yes.
And I had this spreading malignant melanoma was kind of part of my story. It was a big wake up moment for me where God said, Bump, I don't need you. I love you. And it set me down. But the doctor that discovered that probably a year afterwards, it introduced me to one of her, nurses. And she goes, this is Matt. He's an evangelist and he doesn't know it. And wow. I was like, what? And then Kevin gives me this book and I'm like, what? Yeah. And it's just, it all starts to kind of come together until you sit down and you go, Father, yes, like you're this good. And this is who you have set me to be. This is a gift. Why would I give it away? Why would I ignore it? And so that's been that process of embracing it. But I still cringe at the idea of the classic evangelical, whatever. I'll be Billy Graham mixed with some Flavor Flav.
Part of the impetus here is how to carry that into where you spend the most time during the week, which is the marketplace business.
That's right.
Et cetera. And so Matt, coming from that world, he's still got that connection with corporate America, people still wearing crisp shirts, whatever. So he is an evangelist in so many different ways. He embraces it, but it is truly about innovation and thinking differently and carrying it into this whole marketplace thing. And I think he prefers that, but he'll go preach a sermon too, at a church. So, and he's good at it, so it's a very, floaty kind of, it's not the old, you all probably know that, but
I'm not going to see you on the street corner.
Yeah, I'll be on the street corner, but I'll be acting out some reenactment skit.
Making balloon animals.
Yeah.
Right.
Playing guitar or something.
Oh gosh, you guys are fun. Okay, so as we're starting to close down, I'm curious to know, have you experienced any surprises in your partnership together in this business where it's just like, man, like I never saw God doing that. Like I never saw that coming in this partnership. Any fun surprises?
Well, I'll just be brief about it. I think Matt probably can speak to that a lot more, just having encountered the weirdness of Kevin Adams. But I think the big surprise for me is I'm here, and I didn't want to do this. And there's part of me, and there's days I still don't, but I know I'm supposed to. And I take that very seriously. And I love Matt. He's like my brother. Sometimes he's like my son. And I'm just so blessed to have a partner who would die for me and vice versa. The surprising part is that would even be a thing, because we probably never would have become friends, just the age difference, et cetera. So my great surprise is Matt, but he's a gift from God to me and my family. And so
thanks, bro.
Sure.
That's beautiful. What about you, Matt?
Man, I just, I think one of the things that I've tried to learn is to not be surprised at God. That's one of the things that Kevin's taught me is be excited but never surprised. And, I look back to who I was 3 years ago and where I am now. And, man, it's just so radically different than anything I'd ever thought. And so I am the guy that goes, Kevin, can you believe this is happening? Like, oh my gosh, like this person called, or Kevin, I'm flying next week to Florida to speak to this corporate group. And he's like, cool, man. So that's like that's the constant like flow of this thing of just having to be that guy who's just like, oh my gosh, like I feel this Peterness, and I've learned I've learned how to not cut off people's ear, and be like, in my mind, Peter is the old Chris Farley, Matt Foley motivational speaker, Ooh, I'm going to build 3 houses for you, Jesus. Like he's so like, that's Peter, right? And that's me. And what God has surprised me the most is showing me that that's my heart and that's who I am.
Yeah.
No, I just that part when Jesus looks at Peter and just says, "Feed my lambs." So the most surprising thing to me is that God would be good enough to let me do that.
So good.
Yeah.
Oh, I love you guys.
Back at you, sister.
Oh
Virtual.
my gosh. So will you guys share a little bit about how people can get connected with YouPrint and with your radio show? If people can listen to it from all over the world, let's give us the scoop.
Yeah. The site is youprint.life, youprint.life. And it's cool how God did that. Is live the life of impact you were created for. Live a YouPrint life. And so, we at our core, it's about uncovering your genius, discovering your why, and living the life of impact you were created for. And so the site is the hub. Of course, you got podcasts on iTunes and Spotify. Wake Up Our Faith.
It's all about setting people free to recognize that they don't need to grovel. You're a son or a daughter, and it's get on with it. The greatest step of obedience is to understand that. And just like you, that's our heart is all over that. And we believe our Father's heart is. So that's sort of the nutshell. There's a lot more to it, but we're doing it. We're stepping in.
YouPrint.life. Thanks,
yes,
Kevin.
Ma'am.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Shay.
Thanks, Shay. Awesome to see you.
There was so much goodness in what Kevin and Matt shared today. And I thought I'd just close by sharing just a couple key takeaways from the conversation with Matt and Kevin. One, I loved how Kevin talked about living and working from heaven to earth. That is exactly how the two of them operate. They are always staying open to how God is leading them in terms of how they work with one another, how they engage with others. If you remember, there was multiple times when Matt would say, here's what the Lord said. He said, don't speak, honor Kevin. He told me to speak. He told Kevin, write, and I will provide. He told Matt, if you listen to me, I will bring your gift before kings. The way they've operated and the way they have thrived together in collaboration with one another in this business is by keeping Christ at the center, remaining sensitive to how the Lord leads, and honoring one another. And rather than competing with one another, they came together in partnership, learn how to honor their differences and the gifts that God placed on the inside of them, and together, with Christ at the center, able to have an amazing impact in the lives of others across the world. The bottom line here is to do business by the infinite power of God's grace, as opposed to relying primarily on your grind, to give God the glory and experience his best, not just for you, but for all that God has called you to impact in your sphere of influence. We must put the king's agenda first. And I think that Kevin and Matt are wonderful examples of doing this in their businesses. If this is your heart and you haven't connected with our Firestarter School yet, I want to encourage you to grab our Firestarter School. It walks you through key foundations and practical applications to help you confidently partner with God at greater levels in your business. It's really all about positioning you to experience his best and to have a greater kingdom impact in the marketplace. It's an MP3 audio course that's available via mobile app. So it's kind of like having me as a mentor in your pocket. And I truly believe that if you are a listener of this podcast and you're enjoying what you're hearing and learning, you really are going to want to grab Firestarter School. And lifetime access to it is available at the price of your choice. So head over to our website at kingdomdrivenentrepreneur.com/Firestarter School and get all the details. Look forward to talking to you more on the next episode of the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast. Take care and God bless.
Thanks for joining us on the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, we encourage you to subscribe and spread the word. And don't forget, you can gain access to even more resources, plus a thriving community of fire starters by visiting our website at kingdomdrivenentrepreneur.com.